Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 6 British things that are actually American. And I've done the other side of this video, which is 6 American things that are actually British. And I remember him mentioning he was going to do this video and thinking, like, so these things that I've done my whole life, I've been lied to. This isn't actually from my country, which doesn't actually matter because you still do them. It doesn't actually make a difference. It's just fascinating to learn, I guess, the history of certain things that you just wouldn't have expected to have not come from your country. If there's anything I can think of, there's probably not, to be honest. Like things that are, I guess, seen as British but aren't. It's probably gonna be some foods and stuff. Maybe like, I'll tell you what. Maybe an English breakfast isn't actually from England, you know, that sort of stuff. I mean, that probably would be the case. I wouldn't be surprised. Or roast dinners or something like that. But we're going to check this out. Hopefully going to enjoy. Links are also in the description to my Patreon, where you can see reactions that I can't post to YouTube. But let's just check this out.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to things and stuff. Specifically, things and stuff that are widely synonymous with one country but, unbeknownst to most of us, were invented in the other. Today, we're going to look at 6 British things that, against all odds, are actually American. And you might be wondering, Lawrence, you're British. Why would you choose to show up your country in favour of the United States? Well, firstly, you hypothetical person, my official nationality is British American. And secondly, I recently gave Britain its due in the much heralded video 6 American things that are actually British. I'll link to that video at the end. And if you would like to be alerted about all future videos and haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, do that now. In the meantime, allow me to inflate your brain with facts so beautiful they belong in the Louvre or the discount bins at Walmart.
Fair. To be fair, I don't like bounty bars, so you can keep that in America, although it's big here as well.
When I first moved to the United States all of those years ago, people would ask me, Lawrence, apart from your family and Yorkshire puddings, what do you miss most about Britain? And my answer was always the same. British chocolate. I mean, sure, your average American grocery store might carry 1 or 2 Cadbury bars and mini eggs, but Crunches, Twirls and Whisper bars were a lot harder to come by. However, America's confectionery aisles did contain one divisive British chocolate bar that I happen to love. Bounty. Okay, fantastic, I can live with that, except 2 of the things that I just said are completely and utterly a little bit false. The Bounty, a chocolate-covered coconut-filled fixture of UK sweet shelves, is not actually British at all, but American. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Lawrence, Britain sells M&M's, Snickers and countless other American top sellers. What makes Bounty so special? And in some respects, you raise a valid point.
I think I know what he's going to say here. Is it because they're in the celebrations? Like, it's like a box of chocolates that I think are seen as British. You got Milky Way, Mars bar, Snickers, which I guess Snickers also. Are Snickers American? That's a surprise to me. I think it is, but that, god damn, actually it probably is. I'm chatting shit.
Especially since the wrapper is plastered with obviously Hawaiian imagery. You see, I always just thought that this was a product of fantastical marketing. Kind of like how Britain came up with the world's most famous bears despite the total absence of bears in the British wild. Furthermore, this one is special in part because of its name, which brings me on to lie number 2, the truth of which is this. Americans don't call them bounties. Here, the bar is branded differently depending on whether it's light or dark chocolate, with the names Almond Joy and Mounds applied respectively. Both were launched in the first half of the 20th century in the United States. And it was only a few years later, in 1951, that Mars Incorporated, which had no trademark attachment to the American varieties, launched Bounty in the UK and Canada as straight-up imitations.
Wait, so they're called Bounty in Canada as well? Damn. Bluebirds.
Sandwiched in between the launch of these sugar-laden chocolate bars was an even bigger killer. World War Part 2. Thankfully, as an antidote to the horror and misery unfolding before them, both countries found comfort in music. Most famously, American band leader Glenn Miller was hugely popular on both sides of the Atlantic, to the tragic extent that he disappeared over the English Channel in 1944. As it happens, Britain's most lauded wartime music icon herself became synonymous with the English Channel. In addition to singing the famous World War II hit and Doctor Strangelove outro track, We'll Meet Again, Vera Lynn soothed Britain with the equally hopeful White Cliffs of Dover. As the Luftwaffe homed in on Britain, who wouldn't have found comfort in the prophecy? There'll be bluebirds over the White Cliffs of Dover. Well, for one, ornithologists, because there are no f***ing bluebirds in Britain.
I was about to say this, right? I was kind of confused. I've never seen a bluebird in my life, which is why I was kind of confused reading. I was like, bluebirds? I've never seen them before, but maybe I'm just living somewhere where they don't live. But
in fact, they're entirely endemic to North America, which also appears to have been true of the song's lyricist. After it was released, New Yorker Nat Burton insisted he didn't realise that England didn't have bluebirds. Still, nice sentiment, Nat, if that is your real name. Anyway, speaking of iconic anthems, that brings us on to this.
Okay, this is a classic football song for, like, you got Liverpool. There's a few other clubs in Europe that have it. I think Celtic. I think it's Celtic. There's a few other teams, but it's like I wouldn't have guessed this isn't a British song, or even more so a Scouse song. What the hell?
Few things are more British than football, a sport whose origins can be traced back to ancient China. Really? Okay, fine, but few things really are more British than football chants and songs. And perhaps the most iconic anthem in the whole of English football is You'll Never Walk Alone. Appropriately, given the song's title, it is also synonymous with more than one British club, with supporters of both Celtic and Liverpool belting it out before kick-off. In fact, the song is so inextricably linked to Liverpool in particular that those 4 words can be found on the club's badge. It is used in reference to the successful 1963 version by Jerry and or the Pacemakers. At the time, Jerry and or the Pacemakers were a popular group from Liverpool, perhaps second only to the auto cues failed. I suppose the people are never going to know the identity of that other group now. And so the song and everything it represents is as Liverpudlian as Albert Dock, except it isn't. You see, unlike the band formerly known as the Quarrymen, Jerry and or the Pacemakers did not write their first few hit singles. And this included You'll Never Walk Alone. But then you knew that if you happen to be a fan of musicals. I once played Prince Dauntless in Once Upon a Mattress, so it's a touchy subject. The piece was in fact the brainchild of American songwriting duo Rodgers and Hammerstein, who included the track on their Broadway smash Carousel. So how did it come to be an anthem for England's most trophy-laden club? Well, by 1963, Jerry Marsden, this time without his pacemakers, is said to have played a demo to Liverpool's legendary manager Bill Shankly, who was like, "That is an absolute banger, mate. Inject that shit into my veins." Now, we haven't verified the validity of that quote, but rest assured it was along those lines. Later that year, the song, along with other chart hits of the day, made it onto the terraces of Liverpool's Anfield Stadium. And unlike those other songs, it hasn't left since.
That has actually surprised me a lot. Remembrance poppies as well? What?
That's right, even the poppies that are worn by us Brits in the lead up to Remembrance Day aren't actually British. But don't take my word for it, instead, here's me from a year ago discussing it on a YouTube short that you probably missed. Moina Michael was an American professor who pioneered the idea of commemorating soldiers with the red poppy. She'd been inspired to push for it after reading the famed poem In Flanders Fields by John McCrae, himself a Canadian lieutenant colonel. While teaching a class to disabled World War I servicemen at the University of Georgia, Moina saw an opportunity to engineer financial support for the wounded by selling poppies. As a result of her efforts, the American Legion Auxiliary and the British Legion Appeal Fund both formalized the poppy as a symbol of remembrance from 1921.
Oh, so they've done it at the same time. That is fascinating to me.
While Britain widely persists with the symbol more than a century later, America has long since phased out the
most prominent thing around Remembrance time and stuff like that.
November 11th poppy, with some choosing to wear one during May's Memorial Day. Thanks, past Lawrence, my neck hurts. And now, just like my mate Daz after an hour on the beach, we go from something red to something even more red.
Father Christmas. Wait, so how old is Christmas then? Or not Christmas, because like Christmas is old, but how old is Father Christmas then? I guess this is around the time it was commercialised, which I'd say probably early 20th century, maybe. Which I guess does actually kind of make sense that it comes from the US. But I wouldn't have guessed that. But I don't know.
But Father Christmas, one of Santa's pseudonyms while delivering presents in Britain, didn't always wear that particular colour. But as I said in 1987 when Santa brought me a protein pack instead of a proton pack, back up there, mate. Because who was Father Christmas actually? Well, I won't bore you with all of the details because I already did that in this video. But in a nutshell, it went like this. From English folkloric tradition, Father Christmas was indeed the personification of Christmas. Historically, he went by several names, including Christmas Lord, Prince Christmas, and I'm not making this one up, Captain Christmas. But when settlers boarded ships for the New World, they didn't take Captain Christmas with them, presumably opting for an actual captain. There are two big reasons for this. Number one, 17th century Puritans in England had declared Christmas an affront to God, even banning it at one point. And number two, Puritans in New England kind of viewed things the same.
I think Henry VIII was around his time when he banned Christmas and stuff, but I could be wrong.
In way. And so many Christmas traditions were shelved, including Father Christmas. But fear not, because 200 years later, with Puritan influence having long since waned, he returned. However, by the time he was revived by the Victorians, who often depicted him in green robes and a crown ordered on eBay, the US had moved on to other things, such as the Dutch figure Sinterklaas. And at this point you might be thinking, so what, Lawrence? You lied to us. All this tells us is that Father Christmas is still British. Correction, was still British. Because during the 19th century, word of Santa Claus reached England. People seemed to take a shine to him, and although for a while he and Father Christmas remained distinct, our version started taking on elements of that curious fellow from the North Pole. For instance, his crown disappeared and was replaced by a hood, probably also from eBay. His waist became larger and his cheeks rosier. And after Santa Claus was depicted in 19th century cartoons wearing red and white, Father Christmas came to follow suit. I didn't intend that pun, but...
Did you say 19th century cartoons? There was cartoons in the 19th century?
Gosh, it was good. And so today you could argue that he remains Father Christmas in name only, hence why a lot of Brits just call him Santa Claus.
Tea bags. Okay, now this is a problem. What?
When you hear the word tea, there's only one country that comes to mind. Britain. I've just realised that's 3 countries. Nonetheless, the British fixation with tea is very real, dating back to the 1660s when it was brought to England by Catherine of Braganza, the future Queen of England. Just over a century later, Britain was so enamoured with tea that Americans in Boston famously copied us by hosting a tea party of their own. And on a personal note, the one thing that Americans assume most about me is that I prefer tea to coffee, which is only true if I've had 3 coffees. That said, British people do generally love their tea, whereas Americans, more often than not, are indifferent. Instead, the latter love their lattes. And so it will surprise absolutely everybody to learn that tea bags were invented not in Britain, but Milwaukee. The first patent, or patent if you will, was filed in that city in 1903 by its inventors Roberta Lawson and Mary McLaren. Within 5 years, the idea caught the attention of New York importer Thomas Sullivan, who subsequently had them shipped around the world. The tea bags, not the inventors. Today, tea bags are a common household item in Britain, but Yorkshire tea, which is manufactured 80 miles from my English hometown, owes everything to 2 people 80 miles from this one. Behold US patent 723287, the tea leaf holder. Is that what it's called?
Conclusion.
And so,
that
if I've learned anything from this 2-part series, it is that both of my homelands have a rich history of influencing each other. In many ways, our special relationship feels more like one of siblings. We might squabble from time to time, but it's only because we can't stand each other.
Tea bags being created in the US has actually baffled me. I would never have guessed that in my life. And my grandmother used to say while making a cup of tea on a Sunday morning, the Chinese invented tea, Britain stole it, and America perfected it. God damn. Our joy has nuts, mounds don't. Sometimes you feel a nut, sometimes you don't. Part of an old commercial. What? Let's not forget that chocolate is native to the Americas in general. Yeah, I guess it grows there, right? Which does make sense. I mean, the climate in Britain is not there to grow chocolate or to grow grow cocoa. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And who would have known? Oh, my nose is going now. Yeah, these are some surprises to be fair. Oh god, it's gone. You know what? I'm gonna just leave it here. Hopefully you enjoy it until next time. Peace.